Alright, appropriate regulations for spring train 2013. Apparently Nick just went through the GOM and basically copied and pasted on the presentation here, so we'll stick with it. A lot of it we're going to talk about in other presentations, so I'll do my best to skip over that stuff. Alright, so this presentation is designed to review appropriate 135 and 91 regulations that apply to our day-to-day operations. Not all applicable regulations will be covered in this presentation. Kind of wanted him to do that, but general policies, flight following, loading we're not going to have to talk about because we talked about that with weight and balance. Flight operations and weather we can also skip over because we're going to talk about that in another presentation. General policies, responsibility and authority of the pilot and command. PIC of an aircraft is directly responsible for its final authority as to the safe operation of that aircraft. In an in-flight emergency requiring immediate action, the PIC may deviate from any rule of this part to the extent required to meet that emergency. Each PIC who deviates from a rule under this part shall, upon request of the FAA, send a written report of that deviation to the FAA. Anybody remember what the time frame of having to give a report is if you do have to deviate?
10 days.
10 days? I think it's 72 hours within the incident. Alright. Pilots are not permitted to operate Tradewind Aviation aircraft in a careless or reckless manner that would endanger the life or property of another person. Each required flight crew member must remain at the assigned duty station with seatbelt fastened while the airplane is taking off or landing and while it is en route. A required flight crew member may leave the assigned duty station if the crew member's absence is necessary for the performance of duties in connection with the operation of the airplane, or if the crew member's absence is in connection with basically physical needs.
Do you have an example for the first one? The connection with the operation of the airplane?
In the PC-12, if you want to use the auxiliary heating in that airplane, you have to make sure that the grate is clear.
Okay.
So you'd have to basically get up, go in the back, and clear that. I don't know if you can necessarily think about anything else.
You need a door cause? You want to send the SIC back there?
What'd you say? Door cause. In flight. Cargo door cause.
It's important to care,
Yeah.
feel that thing back.
Done that before. The policy of Tradewind Aviation is to cooperate fully with the FAA, NTSB, or any other agency that regulates Tradewind Aviation operations. All management and operation personnel responsible as a custodian of responsible as a custodian of records will make those records available when requested. Failure to comply with the policy is a violation of the FAA and the FARs and the manual. So I'm guessing that's the GOM by what he means by this manual. Crew members are required to comply with any reasonable requests made by the FAA or foreign government inspector conducting an en route or ramp inspection. If a request is made that is deemed unreasonable, the crew member will report it to the PIC, who will report it to the Director of Operations. Any decision to carry out a suggestion or directive from an FAA official is subject to the final determination and authority of the PIC. This was brought up this year in the Caribbean. Can the FAA or the foreign government of the aviation authority, can they legally enter your airplane without your permission?
Yes.
No, they cannot. All right.
Customs can.
Customs can.
Okay.
Completely different.
Okay.
All right. Those of you guys that get these San Juan emails, that one got shut down real quick. Customs can do whatever they want to do with your airplane. All right. So there is a difference there. All right. Questions on that?
Can we
Yes,
just
sir.
lock the doors?
What's that?
Can we just lock the doors when we leave?
For customs? I guess you could, but
Then they won't open because the locks will freeze.
yeah. But I wonder if they'll just stand there and wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to be present for them.
Yeah. It's a $10,000 fine no matter what.
Enjoy signing that paper.
Any flight flown by Tradewind Aviation is subject to an en route inspection. FAA inspectors desiring to conduct such en route inspections may have first priority for the flight deck jump seat. The inspector will present to the PIC their identification and FAA Form 110. I've never heard of this happening. Reporting potential hazardous weather conditions. Whenever the flight en route's a potentially hazardous weather condition or a irregular, can't talk. Something wrong on the ground or navigation facility, considering the essential safety of other flights, crew members shall notify an appropriate air traffic control center or flight service station, ground station as soon as possible. Practical. Prior to flight, the PIC shall ensure all required navigational material and publications are appropriate to the route to be flown, are aboard and in current condition. The PIC is responsible for any changes in operating procedures as they pertain to the aircraft operation and/or company policy changes, en route nav status, applicable NOTAMs, operational data, pertinent special notices as published in the AIM, and current forecast weather conditions along the planned route of flight. Tradewind maintains the necessary materials and publications in a current condition to enable flight crews to efficiently and completely discharge their flight planning responsibility. Basically, VFR and IFR charts make sure that you have the ones that you need for the flight. Once again, that they are current high route flights as well if you're going to be flying higher than 18,000 feet in the PC-12s. Alright, pilot crew member certification. All pilot crew members must hold a current airman certificate appropriate to the assigned crew position and must have possession of the certificate when engaged in commercial operations. They must also hold a current medical certificate and have that available for inspection. Crew members are obligated to show proof of airman and medical certification to the administrator, the director of operations, chief pilot, representatives of the NTSB, law enforcement, and Tradewind check airmen. Any change in the status of a flight crew member's airman certificate will be reported to the chief pilot and recorded in the crew member's training record. In order to act as PIC in air carrier operations in a turbojet aircraft, an ATP certificate is needed with an appropriate type rating for that aircraft. An ATP is required for all PICs, for all Tradewind Aviation turbine operations unless the requirement is waived by the Director of Operations. All pilots in command shall maintain a first-class medical certificate. Alright. SIC is required to have at least a commercial pilot certification with an instrument rating and a multi-engine land rating if assigned to a multi-engine aircraft. The SIC is required to maintain a second-class medical certificate. SIC will maintain a first-class medical certificate while performing international operations. Basically, Tradewind always asks our SICs to have first-class medicals anyways, especially if you're in the Caribbean. Minimum flight crew for an aircraft is established in the AFM. All flight crews are qualified in accordance with Tradewind Aviation's training program. On each flight, one pilot is designated PIC and one is designated SIC. This is indicated on the crew's trip sheet. No passenger may occupy a pilot seat in a company aircraft during 135 charter operations. Manipulation of controls. No person may manipulate the flight controls of Tradewind Aviation aircraft during a Part 135 flight unless that individual is an employee of Tradewind Aviation who is assigned and qualified to act as a crew member in that make and model of an aircraft, the FAA Aviation Safety Inspector who is observing a flight check, in which case that person must have the express permission of the PIC and is qualified and current in accordance with 14 CFR 6158. Carriage of weapons. No person may, while on board an aircraft, being operated by trademen carry on or about that person a deadly or dangerous weapon, either concealed or unconcealed. This does not apply to officials and employees of the United States or a state or municipality who are authorized to carry arms in the performance of their duties. Other persons carried within the United States authorized by the Director of Operations. The PIC should be notified that there are weapons to be carried as baggage on board the aircraft. Consider the following actions. If possible, put the weapons in a storage area that is not accessible to the passengers while in flight. If unable to make the weapons inaccessible, have them unloaded and the firing mechanism removed. Have the ammunition stored separately from the weapon. If the crew cannot secure the weapons, then they may not be carried on the aircraft. Alcoholic beverages. No passenger except in an emergency shall be allowed aboard an aircraft should they appear intoxicated or drugged. Any violation of the above policies must be reported to the chief pilot immediately, who will in turn forward a report to the FAA within 5 working days of the occurrence. Don't do drugs. I wish there was more slides like that one on here. CFR 135-253. The use of intoxicants including beer and wine by any person while on duty or in the case of flight crew members within 12 hours prior to duty is prohibited. No trademan aviation personnel may be intoxicated or suffering from the after effects of drinking when reporting to duty. The use of narcotics, hallucinogens, illegal or controlled substances are absolutely forbidden at all times and will not be tolerated by the company. If a prescription or non-prescription drug used to treat a medical condition is being taken by an employee, the employee has a personal responsibility to check with an AME to ensure the drug will not cause harmful side effects that may affect work performance. Employees shall notify their supervisors if they are taking any medications that may affect work performance. Management shall make every effort to either grant sick leave or reassign the employee to less critical work assignments. Rest and flight and duty time limits on demand operations. Alright, so a flight crew member must be given at least 10 consecutive hours of rest during the 24-hour period that precedes the planned completion time of the assignment. The crew member will be relieved of all duties during the rest period. No crew member will be assigned and no crew member shall accept any duty with Tradewind Aviation during the required rest period. Each crew member shall receive at least 13 rest periods of at least 24 consecutive hours in each calendar quarter. And I believe that's scheduled 10 hours off. Alright. Crew member flight and duty time limitations shall be as detailed in CFR 135, subpart F, which include but are not limited to the following. Crew members may fly no more than 8 hours or 10 hours during any consecutive 24 hours if due to delays beyond the control of the crew or the company a crew member flies more than the aforementioned flight time limitations. The crew member will be given an intervening rest period of at least 11 consecutive hours if the flight time was exceeded by no more than 30 minutes. 12 hours if the flight time was exceeded by more than 30 minutes but less than an hour. 16 consecutive hours if the flight time was exceeded by more than 60 minutes. No crew member will be assigned, nor may they accept an assignment for flight time if that crew member's total flight in all commercial flying will exceed 500 hours in a calendar quarter, 800 hours in any 2 consecutive calendar quarters, or 1,400 hours in any calendar year. Compliance of crew member flight times is a Tradewind Aviation operations base in each pilot's records binder. 1,400 hours in a calendar year is a ton of time. Question was brought up in the last class about this, if drive times are considered part of duty time. Short answer is technically no. It is not considered part of duty time. I guess we are considered to have 2 home bases or 2 domiciles, and White Plains is that. So if you are supposed to drive to White Plains, your duty time technically would not start until you arrive in White Plains. They generally try to make it so that your duty time isn't that way, but that is apparently the rule, is that you can't have multiple domiciles. All right.
But for Teterboro, it would count
Maybe.
then. Okay.
I know for a fact, I can't think if it's Talon or something like that on Long Island, but basically any New York airport is considered their domicile. So if they have to drive to JFK from where they're based, that's not considered duty time. So luckily we're not to that point. All right.
You gotta stop at Oxford first to pick up something and then go to White Plains.
That would technically be considered starting a duty time. So say if the office is like, okay, your catering is here, then that would be. But if there's no reason for you to technically stop in Oxford, then your duty time does not start until you
We
get
always
to
get
White
the
Plains.
Yeah, you always get a
Car in
2-car rental car now.
But that's more of a
What if you gotta pick up weight and balance, is there expense,
That's right. Homes.
coolers?
it's a loaded question.
Cause we always stop at the office.
Well, that's the question too, because like if you're riding on a plane down to White Plains, because there's one going down, does your duty time start in White Plains or does it start in Oxford?
At that point, I believe it would start in Oxford. But that was brought up, and that is the answer, is that it's considered a second home base. So therefore, if you are starting there,
So I guess the answer to the question is who considers it?
Well, if the request is to meet in Oxford,
Well, what rule-making body considers it?
that's a good one.
How would we say?
Yeah.
Well, the one that I've always
Gotta
gone
wait
with.
for an accident to
Andy.
happen. They'll figure it out.